if we get to lose Cuba, if we get to lose what Cuba means, it's gonna be a loss for the war, not just for Cuba, because what these medical missions represent for Cuba, but also for the global South, is huge. It's sad, okay. We need to find a way to get incomes. That can be solved, but what about people being treated like doctors? People haven't been have access to healthcare and specialists when the Cuban doctors left the country. Who's gonna take care of there? I don't think like people actually think about that because they don't care. That's the first thing. And then it's like, who cares? A bunch of poor people that needs healthcare. Like, let's be serious. United States don't care about their own people have access to quality healthcare. Imagine to the global south, like, forget about that. Like, let's be serious.
Can I, before anything else, get an update on how you are doing? How you have personally been affected by what all is going on in terms of the blackouts, in terms of the oil blockade. If you were to just talk about your own personal experience of it.
I feel like there is no different of the majority of people in Cuba. It's like we suffer blackouts, we feel food. Like it's really difficult to get around. I still have the possibility to get around, but it's really expensive. It's getting really expensive. Like so, a lot of your money and your income is going just to transportation. It's like the blackouts is affecting everyone, not because you don't have just electricity at home, but also because you don't have like a water supply at home. So and sometimes you don't have gas to cook. And this is not just me, it's just also my family that even them they have to face to just cook with charcoal in different circumstances. I don't like there is no way that you actually can escape from the situation that we are going through in Cuba because even if you have like enough money and a privileged situation when you have like a generator in your home and you have a way to cook food and I don't know like the basic thing is you have like a huge storage of water if you are sick and you need to go to a hospital or a polyclinic or something like that or maybe you know but someone in your family you're gonna face a lot of challenges a lot of obstacles because it's like let's be clear this is not start this year. Has been coming through 16
Six,
years.
yes.
I think like the difference is like the current situation that we're facing now is the worst that we have been facing in the entire history of the Cuban government being employed after 1959.
Why do you think that is the worst compared to, the beginning of the sanctions, the blockade, and then the special period, especially? What makes this more conclusively terrible?
But this is not a thinking. Like you have the data with the numbers. And
Yes.
I was talking about that this morning. Like life expectancy in Cuba is getting lower. The infant mortality in Cuba is heading higher. Like we are a country where we used to manage data that is like a Western hemisphere, like compared with the United States and other countries from the Western globe. Like and now the situation is getting worse. So that means that the entire situation inside of Cuba is getting worse. I just you can go down the streets and walk around. I'm not used to see homeless people, people asking for money on the streets, and that's a new reality in Cuba. And for example, when my parents talk about the special period, they say there were no food during the special period, but we have food now. There is
Hmm.
a lot of private businesses that have a lot of food, a lot of ads, whatever. Sometimes it's really difficult to find some things, certain things. All the things that you find is not the quality that you are asking for, but you can find some. But the prices, that's the real deal.
Hmm.
So there is no people she can say, no, in Cuba there is no food. No, in Cuba there is food. The problem is like now people don't have money to buy it.
Right.
And this is like a contradiction because there is a lot of people in Cuba that are that they want capitalism so much, but they forgot that that's actually capitalism when you have like a lot of pros, a lot of things, but you don't have access to buy the things, but you don't have money to buy the things. And I think like it's getting worse because of that. It's like because the government that used to subsidize food, energy, gas, water, whatever, and now is completely defunded. And you
Right.
just have to be relying on the private sector that are not subsidizing anything for any of us.
And what is interesting is I actually found out that while the oil has been blockaded, you can speak to that, and the pretext that the U.S. government has given, which is kind of crazy, that it's a terror threat and that has kind of declared a national emergency, that Cuba is, and so on, and that's what has led to the recent blockade, right? And despite that, there is still an export of oil to the private sector that is happening. So what is the nature of the US sanctions that allows this, which seems almost specifically geared towards a sort of regime change operation? Because if you're choking out the government and exclusively funding the private sector, it seems like something along the lines of what they're doing with Iran, for example.
Well, you can find it whatever you want. I was like, this is not an attack to the private sector because in some ways the private sector is solving a problem that we have is access to food and medications right now. But the problem is when you try to show yourself as a savior
Hmm.
of the same crisis that you created. And I think like that's the key point here. It's like, okay, you can allow private sector to import oil to the country, but they are not putting money or putting oil in the trash collection in Cuba. They are not putting oil or money in the industry of energy in Cuba. So what actually are you supporting? Like people with big houses, big business, big generators, full of oil or gas. Is like that's not the solution. So it's not, and they know about this.
Hmm.
They are conscious about this. If some people don't want to see it, the connections and connect the dots is because they want to ignore that, but they are just in front of our faces. And I was trying to bring this analogy. It's like when people talk about like the danger of the United States shut down the government because the Cámara and the Senate is not, they don't get an agreement about how much public money should be there. Like the people who are working for the public sector, for the government are the affected the most because they are the ones who suffering the consequence of the money directly. It's the same with Cuba. But the difference, like the US government has been trying to shut down the government for 60 years now in a row, for more than 60 years now in a row. And also it's like they also the big difference, like the most important areas and sectors in Cuba and link it to the public sector. There is trash collection, water supply, energy, healthcare, education, science, technology, enterprises, companies, everything like agriculture, everything is related and connected to the private, to the public sector.
Hmm.
So if you're incentivating, and I'm gonna say incentivated because you're actually not, because the private sector in Cuba also have to face a lot of obstacles. For example, to trying to import or export products to the United States. That's not an easy way to do it because you need a license from the OFCAP to allow you to do your thing. So you need to go through, you need to know the like US law, you need to have someone in the United States that help you. You have to have a bank account. And now they just close again the possibility to Cubans to have accounts in the United States. So it's not an easy way to go. So you say that you're supporting, but you actually are not supporting because then you have Cuban Americans saying like the private sector in Cuba is a lie. There is a policy full of contradictions, but I think like the only thing that is crystal clear is that they want to overthrow Cuban government. Not because I said, they write
Hmm.
it down in a Mallory memo, and they every time they have the opportunity, they repeat that. Like when they say like, for example, when they ask in the audience in the Senate from Marco Rubio State Department, they say this, the head of State Department of the United States, he said like, I would love to see a regime change in Cuba. And he said like, well, the other person was like, oh, maybe you were said like something that a government that is more likely to the United States. But he
Right.
say, no, 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 no.
There is even talk of military force along those lines. And Trump says stuff like, take Cuba. So, what is the end game? Is this like just a change in the government, putting the people that they want in power? Is this annexation that the US is going for? Because even in like interviews, the minister, foreign minister, appears in an MSNBC interview. Everything that they asked him is about like, how are you going to defend yourself? If you defend yourself, are you going to respond militarily, and so on. So even like the concept of military force is on the table now. it seems like. So what is the end game and what do you think they're trying to do here?
Well, I think like the end game is just annihilate the project. My partner was reflecting like a few weeks ago about this, and he said like if they'd accomplish their goal, forget about another Cuba. Forget
Hmm.
about they accomplished that in order to social justice that Cuba was able to achieve, because they are not gonna let that happen again. And I think that this is a loss, not that would be a loss not just for Cuba, but also for the world. But what does the Cuba mean? I have to think about in 80 and how they are still punishment by the Western hemispheres because they dare in the past to create a revolution
Hmm.
for Black people, just to
Hmm. Hmm.
liberate Black people. It's gonna be the same with Cuba. For me, we're trying to become Cuba in New Haiti because people forget, but sanctions are collective punishment, so they are having um, like collect punishment all of us since so long. And if they arrive and they put a food here, they are not gonna forget that in the past we dare you to decify them, and they're gonna be make sure that we didn't do it again.
And I saw your interview with Jeremy Corbyn of Progressive International, and he was like, especially, and I was very surprised to hear this, hopeful about the direction of Cuba being forced on an acceleration ramp towards a sort of renewable energy production and collaboration with China in the process and along those lines, and a lot of investment being
But
required and attracted.
But
So,
I don't think, but I'm also sorry. I don't think that Cuba has been forced to collaboration in and to transition to energy, renewable energies. We have been
mm,
doing that since 2014 and
mm,
earlier than that. That was the project. The problem was like this is a slow process and requires money and innovation and technology. And since the universe, like the technology that allows like a solar panels that China sells, is getting cheaper. So Cuba has been able to buy more and more to trying to create agreements with China. But that was in our state of mind since always. I think like Cuba has something that we call tarea vida, like life
mm,
task. That that we are where we are trying to fight climate change, and we're talking about like a poor country that the carbon print is almost zero. Like
mm,
I grew up recycle not because I was like teach to do it because environment. I do it because of necessity and scarcity. But this is a country that people are sad if they have to throw away a jar, and people are thinking like, okay, this jar maybe they can be like a candle support, whatever. So I grew up in that kind of country with that kind of mentality because in the Western, when you talk about recycling, people only think like, okay, I'm gonna put the glass in this trash, the plastic in this trash, and the other one in, I don't know, whatever. I don't know. The third
mm,
one is like for the food, compost.
mm,
Oh, you does not care about like the environment or the climate change because you're maintaining your habits of consumption as high as possible.
mm.
You're not doing second chances for something. So I don't think like you has been forced to do that because we have been doing that forever. No, for the same, like the people I've been doing that unconsciously. And that's another problem that we have. It's like when people have to do that, they link it to a scarcity. They don't
Right.
link it to progress and taking care of the environment. Because it's like, so there is a lot of layers that, but I don't think like that we have been forced to do that. I think like if something happens, like we need to rush to do that. We have been pressured to rush to finish what we started before all of this happening because the oil blockade didn't start in 2026, it started in 2019. And then before that, starting with more um, laws. But in 2019, you have to remember that Trump in the first administration started to sanctions the oil tankers who dare to bring oil to Cuba.
The fact that the US is like actually resorting to a lot of aggressive threats in the region, how is actually Cuba preparing for that? How are everyday Cubans preparing for that? How are you preparing for that? You're doing journalism there, you're on the street, you're out there all the time, and these people are talking about strikes and like there are striking boats nearby. They have been striking boats. You have been on boats filming, so how do you feel about what is your experience with respect to confronting the idea? How is the government responding to this?
I'm not preparing at all. Like, who is preparing for attack from the United States? We are not Iran.
Mm,
We don't have we don't have enough resources to maintain our lights on. Imagine to face a wars against the United States. Like
right.
that's crazy to think about that. I hope that we don't have any confrontation on that level. I think like of course you are report that the government is training, they're preparing, but certainly I don't want to get to that place because I know that and you can feel it when people talk to you like people is gonna fight at their
Mm,
end because they feel in a way, but I don't think we actually have we can like overthrow or win to the US military forces. We are talking about a country who has spent billions, trillions of dollars in military technology and everything. And we are talking a small island on the Caribbean with zero resources. It's not possible for us to buy syringes. Imagine it like
mm, mm,
military equipment that in
mm,
some way can fight US. It's like
right.
for me, it's ridiculous to think that idea is like, so I don't have, I really wish that that moment won't come.
I mean, this reminds me, obviously, finally, of the Fidel Castro quote that like the U.S. exports bombs, whereas Cuba exports doctors, and how like now, especially the one of the strongest targeted programs in Cuba by the U.S. in this blockade, especially, and how they're actually influencing all the countries in the neighborhood to not to retract these doctors programs. So, can you speak about what's going on with that and how the Cuban government is dealing with the backlash or the blowback from that?
Well, that's sad because like medical missions is one of the main incomes of Cuba has right now. But that's also sad for the countries that left that medical personnel over there because of course like governments are taking decisions pressed by the US because this is also not new. Like United States has been attacking Cuban medical missions for years now for different reasons and different moments. But you need to think about Brazil or Mexico or other countries where Cuba had medical mission that they have to left. We always find a way to survive, and anything like we are gonna find a place or a country that wants Cubans doctors go over there, and
Hmm.
it's not precisely in the global south because you are seeing that Italy has a Cuban medical mission over there, not because we are stalling the job of Italian doctors because the Italian doctors don't want to go where the Cuban doctors are.
Hmm.
That is the most vulnerable and maybe dangerous places and poor places in Italy to try to take care of the poor people in Italy. And also like Cuba did that, has been doing that for so long and we did it in the beginning for free. And now if there is countries that are able to pay for that, why not? To cover for that. But that's not a business. It was a business that what is the point of Elan? To trying
Hmm.
to form and train a student from the global south to become doctors here in Cuba for them to return to their home country. So what is the point to have a business if you're sabotage your own business later, creating human resources? As I said in some points, like if we get lost Cuba, if we get lost what Cuba means, it's gonna be a loss for the war, not just for Cuba, because what these medical missions represent for Cuba, but also for the global south is huge. I'm thinking about is that okay? We need to find a way to get incomes. That can be solved, but what about people being treated by
Hmm.
doctors? People haven't been have access to healthcare and a specialist. So who's gonna treat them now when the Cuban doctors left the country? Who's gonna take care of there? And I don't think like people actually think about that because they don't care. That's the first thing. And then it's like, who cares a bunch of poor people that needs healthcare? Like, let's be serious. United States don't care about their own people have access to quality healthcare. Imagine to the global south, like forget about that. Like let's be serious. Like,
So,
but it's sad.
first you did war in Cuba, then you did the hardline on Hudson. You actually came to the US and did like interviewed a lot of people in government and so on. Now you like routinely talk to different people uh, on like in a podcast sort of format, but also you have these videos that you're doing covering various facets of Cuba. So especially in the wake of the new developments in like the horrific state right now, what sort of work have you been engaged in, and what can you speak about?
We are doing as much as possible in order to visualize what is happening in Cuba. And we have been doing exactly the same that we have been doing the last 6 years. It's like now more than ever, our work is important. And my desire for the future is just to get bored. Like, oh, there is nothing to talk about US policy, Cuba relations. But it's not. It's getting intense. It's getting sad. It's getting frustrated. It's giving me a lot of anxiety. Everybody on this team is working as ass off. It's like actually, if you're working 12, 13 hours a day, it's like weeks without stop, without weekends, without nothing, because we actually see and think about that this job is important, that we need to visualize, that we need to show what is happening with Cuba right now. And also because this is not a problem with Cuban people can solve. This is not a problem that we just can try to obligate and force our government to solutionate it. This is a problem that is coming from the United States. It's just the US government, US people can fix it.
There really isn't much of any help from coming from the Democrats. Also, I noticed. I remember there was somebody that you interviewed, I forgot his name, congressperson that you interviewed, who had a more positive role with respect to Cuba. But this time around, I didn't see anyone even. I don't even think I saw AOC speak about what's going on in a serious way. Though Ilhan Omar's daughter, I think, was just there.
But it's not enough, Kartik. It's not enough. It's not enough people talking about Cuba. It's not enough people like trying to visualize Cuba. It's not enough politicians. And also like Cuba is like a poison topic. Like no one want to touch it. It's like Donald Trump is wrong in everything, but don't touch Cuba. Don't talk about Cuba. They don't want the backlash of talking to Cuba. Cuba is communist. Cuba is bad. And also like inside of the United States, you have so many problems over there that it's like people are just busy. And also people in the United States have been surviving too in a different way, but they have been surviving to their own government. That's why I don't trust them to bring me freedom, because they are not able to liberate their own people.